watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in there, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
All right. Thank you very much, former U.S. Marine, and thanks to the young lady that we heard singing the national anthem there. So, back to the issue at hand, one of the things that really intrigues me is this issue of nuclear power. And there's essentially a program that's created by Palantir that is supposed to make construction of these nuclear plants quicker and more efficient. Explain how quickly that can happen, because energizing and powering AI is one of the biggest problems. We know China is building plants all over its entire country right now.
We can't get there without a renaissance in nuclear power in this country. The fact is, over the last 2 decades, we made it effectively illegal to build a nuclear power plant in this country. I had a nuclear power plant in my district that went dormant. That was a huge, massive mistake. We've seen what's happened in Europe, and they've made similar decisions. We have to embark on a nuclear renaissance. Palantir, leveraging the lessons we've learned in large-scale industrial manufacturing, can effectively create a digital twin of any complex manufacturing process. Take anything that right now is embedded in an Excel spreadsheet, on a whiteboard, or in someone's head, tribal knowledge, put it in software, leverage AI to make that worker 20 times more productive. So we want to be part of this nuclear revolution. We just signed a big deal with a nuclear company. I think if you get government out of the way, if you have a more sane regulatory environment, make it easy to permit and build, there's no limit to what we can achieve in this country.
So there's talk now about AI regulation going state by state across the country. Can you explain why that is or isn't a good idea?
In my own opinion, I worry that if we have a balkanized regulatory environment for a technology that fundamentally cuts across state lines, is involved in interstate commerce, that it could slow us down. Yes, we need to have sensible guardrails to ensure that AI is not used for evil purposes, but we know for a fact that if the Chinese Communist Party wins the AI race, they will use it to perfect their techno-totalitarian system of government and export it beyond Xinjiang province, beyond its own borders, around the world. So the single stupidest thing we could do in order to lose to China and give them the gift is to slow down. So I think a coherent, simple, but safe regulatory framework for the entire country is what makes sense. I know that there are those in Congress that are working on a sensible compromise. My hope is that we'll arrive at a smart piece of federal legislation. Often hard to do smart federal legislation, but that's where we have to go in the near future.
Squeeze in one more. What are your thoughts on the president signing off on NVIDIA to sell chips to China? For a lot of people, that's going to sound like the opposite of what we want.
Well, I think the real existential race we're in from a technology perspective is with an NVIDIA competitor, Huawei. And I want to be very wary of anything that allows China to steal our technology, including NVIDIA's cutting-edge technology, in order to leapfrog us. We've seen that in various industries going forward. So I think we need to do a better job of modernizing our export controls, making sure we don't have loopholes in our export controls, and drawing the line in terms of what is and isn't acceptable. I'm not saying no commerce with China at all. When it comes to really sensitive dual-use technology, i.e. technology that can be used for military purposes in a future conflict, used against Americans in a future conflict, I think we need to be very, very careful about doing business with China, because there is no such thing as a private company in China.
All right, we're going to hear more about that to come. Mike Gallagher, Palantir Chief of Defense, Thank you. Very good to see you. As always, we are waiting here in Pittsburgh for President Trump. We know that the motorcade arrived. He often spends some time meeting with some of the folks in the back behind the curtain before he comes out. So we're going to take you there live as soon as that gets underway. In the meantime, a DOJ cut deadline fight is unfolding on Capitol Hill. Democrats like Chuck Schumer pushing back on plans to lock in billions of dollars in cuts and savings. And it's a deadline because if they don't do it before Friday, they're going to lose the right to take rescission cuts against these payments.
This package endangers national security, our own national security.
My Democrat colleagues may not want to acknowledge it, but we have a serious spending problem in this country, Mr. President. And the very least we can do in response is to target some of the egregious misuses of taxpayer dollars that we are addressing today in this bill.
Republicans didn't bat an eye when adding $4 trillion to the debt to lower billionaires' taxes, but suddenly when it comes to local news and rural radio stations, they suddenly balk. They say it's waste. That's disgusting.
All right, you get the idea. With me now, Brian Kilmeade, Fox and Friends co-host, host of One Nation here on Fox News Channel, and the Brian Kilmeade Show on Fox Radio, and Jessica Tarlov, co-host of The Five.
I couldn't smile long enough to make it through Brian's
I feel the same way. It's not easy. Here's Rand Paul on this. Let's watch.
We have a deficit of $2 trillion. $9 billion is just a rounding error. We should be able to do that in our sleep, but there is looking like there's enough opposition. We might not actually cut $9 billion.
I mean, this is such a small sliver of the pie. It is like, if you can't do this, they haven't cut anything since 1999 this way. Jessica, quick thought on this.
Yeah, it's obviously small. Elon Musk promised us $2 trillion, then $1 trillion, and now fighting for $9 billion. But the issue is that a lot of what's in the $9 billion are things that are really important. Apparently, Republican senators like Susan Collins and I think Jerry Moran have gotten the PEPFAR funding back in because we want to help people who have AIDS across the world. I mean, this administration wants to do things like pay $130,000 to incinerate tons of food that would go out as food assistance. That's why you're seeing this kind of pushback against these moves, these DOJ cuts. I don't know what Elon Musk thought that he was going to pull off here.
You can find a justification for every single dollar that is spent, but it constantly goes, it just gets bigger and bigger. Eventually, you have to find some things that you can live without. And I would also say, if you cut 10% from a budget, companies do this all the time. You can still function. You can still do these things. You can still run public broadcasting. You can still, work on AIDS around the world if you have 10% less.
But wouldn't you think that you'd get rid of, deductions for private planes, or you wouldn't give a tax break to the wealthiest, or you wouldn't balloon the deficit like this? That's what Rand Paul is saying.
All right, go ahead.
You give a tax deduction to a plane, that incentivizes the building of more private planes because more people buy them. It's a fundamental theory on what runs an economy, unlike what Zoran Mondani wants to do. He hates capitalism. So you have $9.4 billion. Eventually, we're going to get to $150 billion that Musk says he cut from the budget, or DOJ cut from the budget. And I think that number is still growing. The $400 million from PEPFAR is what George Bush did 26 years ago. That looks like it is back in, according to the senator right before we came up here. So it leaves about $9 billion. I did not know this. We've only tried this twice in the past.
That's right.
Once it worked with HW in 92, and Donald Trump tried it in 2018. It did not function. And I would say this, like PEPFAR, unbelievable. It saved a ton of lives.
Absolutely.
But it's 26 years. You know what you do? You say, hey, listen, here's the vaccine. I gave it to you for 26 years. There's got to be a system in which you eventually do it yourself, or there's other people that step in. So there could be a sunset on some of these programs, but nothing ever sunsets. They just add it in. I think it would be a great trend to be able to pull this off. I expect them to be able to pull it off today. The scary thing is, they say that the precedent would be taking apart a budget that passed. You're taking things out of a budget that passed. If Democrats get in power, could they start be pulling out of other things that were agreed upon?
But organizations do that all the time. They say, okay, there's their budget. Then they say, oh, you know what? We spending is exploding, our margins aren't what they should be. We got to find places to cut stuff.
Sure, absolutely. And in the 90s, Bill Clinton cut a ton of stuff, but he went about it the right way. And I've been saying this for a while now. Your budget is a moral document. That is the case that you are making to the American public and the world that these are my
What's
priorities.
the morality
There is no.
of trillions of dollars in debt?
But
Well, then you should. Then Rand Paul is right, and that's why he
Eventually
voted
you have-
against it. But the morality that they are asking us to accept is that we have to sunset vaccines for people of age
Sunset a lot of
across
stuff.
this country,
We just
but
can't
private
stop.
planes stay, and tax cuts for people who don't need them stay, and SNAP
No, but
benefits go away.
people have
Come on.
jobs making planes.
Brian,
Rich
you're
people
not
buy
really doing
planes.
this. You're not
and
comparing
oh, I am
kids
really
with
doing
AIDS
it.
and people who need food
I-
assistance to private plane
There is aid.
manufacturing.
We cannot aid the entire country for the end of time. And when you talk
Just the
about
rich.
getting we're 1.4 trillion dollars a year and we're 500 billion over budget, I would add this. For example, with NPR and PBS. You have a biased news organization. Even Susan Collins says in Maine this is very biased. So you had a chance to sell your cause by just delivering the news, but instead NPR and PBS have allowed themselves to be a target by just not delivering straight news.
Yeah,
So that's why
all
they're
these
being cut today.
organizations need to figure out what their mission is, and they have to stick to their mission, whether it's healthcare or whether it is PBS or whatever it is. But when you get far away from it and you get bloated and you spend too much money on things that you don't need to spend it on, that's when you got to rein it in. And it's ridiculous that we haven't done this since 1999. You can't find
92.
anything you want to cut? Nothing?
But this is nothing. I mean,
Just
9
the
billion
beginning.
is a joke.
You gotta go back
Well,
again.
let's start somewhere, I guess.
We're going back to
You guys,
150
thank you
billion.
very much.
Start
We're
with
gonna-
the wealthy.
We're going to keep going.
Yeah, I hate the wealthy.
Jessica.
I like them fine. I aspire to be one, but I'm just saying.
Right.
All right, you guys, we're obviously keeping it close. Thank you very much. Great to have both of you here. Keeping a close eye on Pittsburgh because the president is about to speak at a landmark AI summit in Pennsylvania. We're going to take you there soon as the president also gives an update on his plans for NATO to arm Ukraine. Huge sea change that we are seeing here. The president's goal has always been the same, to stop the war. But he's shifting on how he's going to go about that based on the actions of Vladimir Putin. General Jack Keane and NATO Ambassador Matt Whitaker join me next.
Dry eyes still feel gritty, rough, or tired? With MyBo, eyes can feel. MyBo is the only prescription dry eye drug that fills a protective layer for the number one cause of dry eye. Too much tear evaporation. For relief that's before using MyBo. Wait at least 30 minutes before putting it back in. Eye redness and blurred vision may occur. Ask your eye doctor about prescription MyBo.
Yeah, your worst nightmare. Your car broke down. Now you're worried if it's going to cost you a fortune in repair bills. Unless you already called CarShield, the legit #1 auto protection company in the country. When you're protected with a plan through CarShield, the process is smooth like ice and done in as little as 3 steps. 1. First, the tow truck takes your car to the shop. The cost of towing, covered when you got a plan through CarShield. Next, you'll probably need to get around while your vehicle's being repaired, right? 2, plans through CarShield have rental car options too. Then comes the best part. 3, when you pick up your vehicle, you don't have a big repair bill to worry about. CarShield administrators get your covered repairs paid directly to the shop, so you're back on the road with no worries. Call now to get an affordable plan through CarShield for your vehicle before it's too late. When you call CarShield, whether you got a small problem like a power window motor that could cost a few $100s, or a big problem like an engine or transmission that could cost you thousands of dollars, you're taken care of. CarShield is the #1 auto protection company in the country, and their administrators have paid out more than $1 billion in auto repairs. That's billion with a B. CarShield is the choice that gives you the CarShield guarantee. Your rate never goes up, and your coverage never goes down, no matter how many claims you have. Look, it's inevitable. As your car or truck ages, the parts and components are gonna fail. It's not worth the risk. Call CarShield now.
Waiting until your car breaks down is too late. Call CarShield for coverage on up to 5,000 parts and get the CarShield guarantee, where your rate never goes up and your coverage never goes down, no matter how many claims you have. Call 800-991-1467. 800-991-1467.
Living with thyroid eye disease for years, I didn't realize how much my bulging eyes were holding me back.
The way my eyes stood out, I'd rather hide than be seen.
But then, my doctor recommended Tepezza.
Doctors have been prescribing Tepezza for over 5 years. In clinical studies, the majority of patients taking Tepezza had less eye bulging, no matter how long they had TED. Tepezza may cause infusion reactions. Tell your doctor right away if you have high blood pressure, fast heartbeat, redness of the face or feeling hot, difficulty breathing, headache, or muscle pain. Tepezza can raise blood sugar even if you don't have diabetes and may worsen inflammatory bowel disease. Tepezza may cause severe hearing problems, including hearing loss, which may be permanent. Tell your doctor if you have any changes in hearing or if you are pregnant or planning to be, as Tepezza may harm your unborn baby.
Now, when I look in the mirror,
I just see me.
Ask your doctor about Tepezza and visit mytepezza.com to see clinical study results.
So President Trump saying that Ukraine should not target Moscow. That after the Financial Times reported that the president encouraged Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to step up strikes deep inside Russia. The president getting a chance to respond to that story earlier today. Here's what he said.
Should Zelensky target Moscow or deeper into Russia? No, he shouldn't target Moscow.
NATO Ambassador Matt Whitaker is standing by. First, we bring in retired four-star General Jack Keane, Fox News senior strategic analyst, former Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, and Chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General, great to have you with us today. That reporting was discussion of, we know part of these defense packages will include, as we heard from the foreign minister in Germany, long-range missiles, which would obviously be able to reach places like Moscow. And the president, deflected that conversation, or his press secretary deflected that conversation about whether he was asking Zelensky if he would use those long-range missiles to reach Moscow. What do you make of this conversation, this back and forth, General?
Yeah, well, I mean, the president really never refuses the opportunity to answer questions, but it doesn't necessarily get at complicated policy issues. I think, in my mind, when I look at what the question asked and then what his response is, he doesn't think Zelensky should be targeting the people in Moscow. That's what I think the issue is here. Mm-hmm. If there's a legitimate military target in the vicinity of Moscow, which Zelensky and his people have gone after in the past, I think certainly that is fair game. So I don't think that's a reflection of a policy issue. It's just the president trying to interpret a question and answer it to the best of his ability. Look, at every weapon that we have given Ukraine and every weapon that the Europeans have given them, they're all used to defend themselves against an invasion force. I mean, they have U.S. F-16 aircraft there. There's actually retired F-16 pilots flying some of those airplanes, Americans. That could obviously be considered an offensive weapon. But the reality is they're all conducting defensive operations against an invasion force. And certainly, if there are bases that are providing aircraft, and the Ukrainians can attack those bases where the airplanes are before they fly over their cities and drop the bombs and have to wait until they get over the cities to attack them, which one of those is a better answer? I mean, it's obvious to anybody. So we got to think, get a big picture here in terms of what is really happening. Certainly, Ukraine should never, and they have not been limited to only attack something that's inside of Ukraine, when a lot of capability is coming from Russia itself.
All right,
and certainly their logistical infrastructure is fair game as well.
2 quick questions if I can. You just said that there are retired U.S. Air Force pilots who are flying over Russia on behalf of Ukraine?
No, they're flying F-16s in Ukraine on behalf of Ukraine. I don't know if they go outside of Ukraine or not. I think the reason why they wanted the F-16s primarily because it's a good aircraft that provides good air defense, and the electronic means that it has is very sophisticated. So yeah, they're part of the defensive structure protecting the people and the troops in Ukraine.
All right, in terms of these drone attacks on Ukraine and how Ukraine can defend themselves against these, it's my understanding that the latest generation of Russian drones has the ability to be undetected over Ukraine. And tell me about how that's going in terms of Ukraine's ability to deflect those incoming drones and these Patriot missiles and how they will protect their ability to have air defense over Ukraine.
Well, Russia does not have stealth drones, but many drones are susceptible to electronic warfare. In other words, you separate the person that's controlling that drone, the messages that they're sending to them, you jam that. And that's an effective way of taking drones down. The reality is that drone technology, Martha, is advancing so rapidly, it's hard for both forces to kind of keep up with it. You know, as an example, on the front lines, if you're a soldier, you can be seen, you can be killed. If you're a tank, same thing. Artillery piece, same thing. Command and control. One of the things the Russians have done is they've started using optic cable wires, very thin wires, that fly the drone out 15 to 20 miles so that it can't be interfered with, because the message is being sent by the wire and not through the air in terms of a radio wave.
Yeah.
The technology is changing right before our eyes here. But listen, counter drone technology is a major issue for the United States. We saw what happened at those bases in Russia. That could happen in the United States to our bases as well. Israel demonstrated very much the same thing with drones against Iran, that they put into Iran, and from Iran itself, they attacked Iran's capabilities. We have to get a counter-drone strategy in this country. And just recently, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, had approved that. The Chief of Staff of the Army recommended it. And this is a huge step forward here that we're going to have to form to be able to do that, to take care of our bases and infrastructure in the United States, as well as our troops that are deployed overseas.
Absolutely.
Complicated stuff, to be sure.
It sure
But
is.
we got to get on with it.
Well, yeah, I'm not, it doesn't give me a lot of confidence that you're saying that we're behind in that, and we do definitely have to become more dominant in that field. We'll take your word for it on that, General. Thank you very much. General Jack Keane, always good to see you, sir. So joining me now, Matt Whitaker, U.S. Ambassador to NATO. Matt, good to have you with us. Thank you for being here. It is very interesting to watch the arrangement that President Trump has put in place here. First, demanding that NATO members up their defense spending to 5%, and now demanding essentially that they spend it on U.S. weaponry in order to defend themselves against Russia. It seems to be a very creative and very effective plan that we're watching play out here. Your thoughts on where we are?
Well, it's good to be with you, Martha. First, I don't think it was demanding anything. I think Europe wants to take over the traditional defense of Europe. They should. It takes the burden off the American taxpayer. It's what President Trump ran on and promised, and he's delivered. And now it's the next natural extension, and that is that they would pay for the defense of Ukraine, which wants to be a part of the EU, wants to be a part of Europe. And so ultimately, this is, again, an America First foreign policy statement that is good for Europe, it's good for the United States, and it delivers, middle-class jobs. Because the reality is right now in Europe, they cannot manufacture the armaments required on the battlefield of Ukraine or on the battlefield if there was a potential war in Europe. And so the United States is the premier manufacturer of these weapon systems, and they're going to deliver them to Europe, and Europe's going to pay for them. And it's a really smart way to go about it.
So in terms of this 50-day window, that after which Russia would have these really forceful sanctions put on them, and it's in legislation by Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator Blumenthal, the president seems to want to have in that bill what they're calling optionality, so that if the bill passes, it would be up to the president to decide whether or not he wants to impose these sanctions based on behavior from Russia. Is that right? And what's your sense? Is he going to get that into that bill?
Well, under the Constitution, the president is the person who exercises foreign policy for the United States of America, and any bill that would could help him exercise that foreign policy authority should give him full flexibility to dial up or dial down sanctions or any other tariffs at his desire and at his will, because that's how he's going to ultimately bring a peace on the battlefield. But what's most important in this whole thing is it needs to be understood that the only way Russia conducts this war is because of selling oil. And the only way they sell oil is through their shadow fleet to places like India, Brazil, and most importantly China, who are continuing to enable this war. And it needs to end. And that's where how you end it, is you go after the way it's funded, and that is funded through their oil being sold to those three countries primarily.
So in terms of the other money that's locked up, 300 billion in Russian assets that's held in the West, is there any suggestion that NATO would approve unfreezing those assets and using them as part of the money to pay for the war against Russia?
Yeah. Well, again, the returns that are being received from that is currently paying for the defense of Ukraine. So billions of dollars are being made in interest on those frozen funds, and those are being used by the European Union. A lot of those funds are held in Belgium, and ultimately that's going to be a European decision as to what to do with that. But certainly, NATO's voice has been loud and clear, is that, right now, President Trump, we need to enable the sale of American armaments through our European NATO allies, and then deploy those weapons systems and weapons on the battlefield in Ukraine. And again, it's a peace through strength. President Trump is the ultimate peacemaker. He has brought peace to a lot of regions of the world, including the 12-Day War, including Iran and Israel, including India and Pakistan. And so ultimately, Donald Trump is going to create the situation in Russia, Ukraine, to bring both sides of the table and get a peace, because that's what is necessary right now. The killing needs to end. It is an unnecessary slaughter that's going on right now.
We hear Medvedev sort of shrugging the whole thing off, saying, we've had these deadlines before, they don't matter to us, we'll see where all of this goes. Matt Whitaker, thank you very much, Ambassador to NATO. Very good to see you. Thank you, Matt. So we're just squeezing a quick break here as we wait to hear from President Trump at this major energy and AI summit in Pennsylvania. We'll be right back.
And lots of people, tens of thousands would be a small crowd. And I'd invite David and he'd get up and do a fantastic job. And it all worked out, but he won a race that was really not doable. I think his opponent was here for a long time, and his father was there for it's about 50 years at least total. And those people aren't easy to beat, but you beat them. So I just want to congratulate you. That's amazing. And he wouldn't have done it without Dina, that I can tell you. We know Dina. Anybody that knows Dina knows exactly what I'm saying. And, you mentioned Butler, but what nobody really talks too much about because they didn't see the order, but I actually looked down to the right before that thing happened, and I said, there's David McCormick. He's running for the Senate. David, come on up. And there was so many people, there was a little problem he had coming up because I said, look, just do it later. And then about a minute later, so, if you would have come up, I don't know what the hell would have happened, right? It worked out better this way, right? I don't know if he would have been around, but I want to take full credit for that. I said, no, don't bother, we'll do it later. So if I didn't say that, who knows? But really great job. Exactly 1 year ago this week, David was at that rally in Pennsylvania. And 12 months later, look at what we have. We have a president. We have if you think about it, we had a country, and I just left the NATO leaders. I left the Middle East, the King of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, as you know, Mir, so great, and UAE. These are three great leaders. And then we just made a deal with NATO where they pay for everything and we give them the ammunition and the missiles and we give them whatever they want. We got to get that war stopped. It's so bad. But every leader said, no matter where, they all said the same thing to me, some of them separately, but it's the same words, just about. They said, it's amazing. 1 year ago, you had a dead country. We were dead. We didn't think you could ever come back, and now today you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's true. It's true. So we're back in Pittsburgh to announce the largest package of investments in the history of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and it's not even close. I don't imagine it's too close. I don't think second is too close. That's a big statement. This afternoon, 20 leading technology and energy companies are announcing more than $92 billion of investments in Pennsylvania. And if you want, we could probably get them up. Let's talk to them right now. But this is a really triumphant day for the people of the Commonwealth and for the United States of America. We're doing things that nobody ever thought possible. As of about a month and a half ago, when we came back from the Middle East, we came back with $5.1 trillion of investments from the three countries that I mentioned, and they're great people, great leaders of those countries. But we came back with many, many planes that they are going to build through Boeing. They came back with a package of goods that were, nobody's seen. I don't think anybody's seen. $5.1 trillion. And we are now at about $16 trillion. And we're at a little bit less than 6 months, but really we're probably at 3 months because it took me a little time to get started, right? So in 3.5, 4 months, let's say, we have about $16 trillion. There's never been anything like that in history. You can go for years and they didn't have numbers like that. And if you look at the last administration, you had negative numbers. You didn't have positive numbers. You're going in the wrong direction. But we have the hottest country, and we're going to keep it that way. Today's commitments are ensuring that the future is going to be designed, built, and made right here in Pennsylvania and right here in Pittsburgh, and I have to say right here in the United States of America. I want to thank, we have some great talent in the administration. I want to thank and say hello to a few people that are with us. Secretaries Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, Doug Burgum, Chris Wright. Chris Wright's very friendly with the people up here. Doug, I wanted Doug for energy. I didn't know about Chris. And Doug said, no, I have somebody that's much better than me, right? And Doug never said that in his life, you have to know. I said, this guy must be very good, but what a team they are. We have one controls the land and one controls the energy, but it was sort of intertwined. So we put them together, right? We never even discussed who's supposed to be the leader of the pack, but boy, it was one instruction, drill, baby, drill, right? And they are drilling. They are drilling. We have the EPA administrator, probably, I must say this, Doug, I hate to say it, Chris and Doug and all of you guys, the most important man on the dais today is Lee Zeldin. It's called environmental protection because he's going to be the one that gets you a permit. He's going to get you a permit for the largest electric producing plant in the world in about a week, would you say? Now, if you go nuclear, I promised him I'd give him 2 weeks. Okay, nuclear will give him a little more time. But the biggest problem we've had is it takes years and years to get permits, and he really is. He's a phenomenal guy, and his history. He's a great lawyer, great congressman, in a race that was, according to most, unwinnable. Almost won for governor, just missed it by a few points, and he's really fantastic. But he's essentially the Environmental Protection Agency, the top man, and he's got things rocking, and already they're building plants and they have their permits. These are permits that would have taken you literally 10 years to get, or I would really say 10 years before they voted against you, because that's really what was happening, and it's crazy all over the country, but we're freeing it up, and he really is going to be able to produce, and I'm looking at the numbers of China, where they're producing a lot of electric. Well, they only have one man they have to worry about, our friend, right, President Xi. He can do that by himself. I don't know if I can. Do I have the right to overrule you? Maybe. I don't know. Probably I do, but I won't have to. But so he has one man, and we have one man. The one man is sitting right there. We appreciate you doing an amazing job. They're building plants already. and they're building plants, and they have already their permits. And I have to brag just for a second, because when I first heard about AI, it's not my thing. Although my uncle was at MIT, one of the great professors, 51 years, whatever, he was longest serving professor in the history of MIT, 3 degrees in nuclear, chemical, and math. That's a smart man. Kaczynski was one of his students. Do you know who Kaczynski was? There's very little difference between a madman and a genius. But Kaczynski, I said, what kind of a student was he, Uncle John, Dr. John Trump? He said, what kind of a student? And he said, seriously good. He said he'd go around correcting everybody, but it didn't work out too well for him. Didn't work out too well, but it's interesting in life. But I will say this, that we have the greatest brains, we have the greatest power, and we are going to have more electric. I said to some of the guys coming in, they wanted to hook up to the grid. I spoke to Mark and Jeff and a lot of people, and they said, well, we want to know about the electric, because I was told we'll need from David. You're the first one that told me.